We are two-thirds the way through the assembly elections in Bihar, held in the eighth month of a global pandemic that's left over 1,000 dead in just that state and put immense pressure on the state's public health infrastructure. Along with that has been the economic fallout. Lakhs of migrants made their way to Bihar as India's big cities stayed in lockdown for months, wiping out the means of livelihood for many. The response to this pandemic shines a light on many aspects of Bihar's governance record. Noted political economy expert and author Shankkar Aiyar has studied that in detail and wrote a must-read column on BloombergQuint last month. He joins us now to talk about the state of Bihar and what its voters are and should be asking for. Shankar, in that piece, you wrote about how the politics of Bihar matters for the rest of India because it's what you call the neglected part of the India story. Why do you say so?
20 million people, I mean, 120 million people, and contribution to GDP is less than a fraction, I mean, less than 3% of total India's GDP. That means that there is something that has not quite been built up, something that's not quite worked up. And in the case of Bihar, I think successive governments have neglected every aspect of what is basic governance on water, healthcare, education, security, and stuff. So if you look at just the handling of the pandemic, I mean, the 2019-20, I mean, this year's 2020 economic survey of Bihar has a shocking, chilling line in it saying that in 7 districts of Bihar, one public hospital doctor caters to 5 lakh people. It's unbelievable. Okay. It is known in Bihar that doctors work all the way till midnight so that they can treat patients, because the number of doctors in Bihar for a population of 120 million is just 44,000. So if you look at various aspects of how governance is done, without human development, you cannot develop a state. I mean, this is delusional. So, which is why I said that if India has to grow, then the laggards have to be developed and the laggards have to be invested in. And there are various issues with the laggards. It's not just Bihar. Bihar, unfortunately, has become the sort of synonym for bad governance. But there is Bihar, there is UP, there is Jharkhand, Odisha. These states need a leg up and more for if the India story has to move further. One of the reasons why you see the Indian story stuck up at the between low and middle income group in the world development indicators is because a large part of its population is not yet on board. In fact, Bihar's per capita income puts it about 30 places behind India if Bihar was a republic. I mean, most its health indicators is in the sub-Saharan region. So these are issues that matter, and these issues matter, and which is why I said that it's not just about who people in Bihar vote, but what the rest of India wants people of Bihar to do.
Uh, the point you made about how many people one doctor caters to is emblematic of this under servicing of state capacity. That's not that there's a piece you wrote a few years ago about how if jobs are what people need at a time when perhaps private sector activity was slowing down, then at that point you'd written about how across India there were 2 million jobs. That same case that you make in Bihar is that the point about such a skewed ratio is also because across doctors and other areas in Anganwadi centers, and that carries through in teachers, in police force deployment across the place. There is not, let alone a step up of state capacity, but an underserving of existing capacity that keeps happening, isn't it?
Very true. Uh, I mean, one caveat here is that Bihar was dealt a body blow when it was the state was partitioned and the industrial part of the state went to Jharkhand. So they have some grouse, and they perhaps have a case for a special state status. There is no question about it. But here's the thing, how does a state justify the need for special status is when it does its bit. How can Bihar politicians and governments escape this one question that I keep asking? How can you have so many teacher vacancies across 7 and 10 years in a state, almost 40% at times? How can you have so many police vacancies in a state? And how can you have so many? So, when I wrote that piece which you referred to, I had said that instead of focusing on creating jobs, if India's policies focused on solving problems, jobs will follow. It's a kind of sequential analysis. Basically, if you fix the law and order problem, for which you will create state capacity, for which you will enroll more policemen, more policewomen, set up more police stations, it will, all of this will cost money. So this money will have to be found, or you will seek them grant from the center. I mean, as it is, Bihar doesn't fund itself. I mean, it's basically resting on central grants. So you do that, you employ more teachers, you create employment, and then you have the multiplier effect of the investment in human development sectors will give you a bump up in consumption, bump up in industrial activity, and there's and so on and so forth. There is plenty of evidence to show that the state in Bihar has been left under invested. I mean, it is really sad.
There are parts of what I want to move to beyond. Before I move to the activities beyond the nature of the state, would it be fair to say that it is perhaps because of this strange dichotomy of asking for special status but leaving a fair area of what can be addressed unattended, is why perhaps both Tejasvi Yadav and the RJD and the BJP are able to make some claim that they'll be able to give X number of government jobs because they know they're lying vacant. So it's not even creating them, they're there.
Probably, I mean that could be the case, but my experience of 30 35 years in journalism sort of makes me a well-rounded cynic, and I don't know whether they have used that or they've just come up with some number, because there is one party which says 10 lakhs, one party which says 19 lakhs. Total number of vacancies in Bihar's three tiers of government would probably be in excess of, if I'm not mistaken, about 3 million jobs would be vacant just now.
So now moving to what is beyond the ambit of the how the state operates and the economy of the rest of the state. That your study has found that this is a state where employment is in too small a share dependent on entrepreneurial activity, dependent on structured employment, and there's a lot of it is either self-employed or in a manner that is dependent on too many vagaries of construction work, agricultural work, that isn't within safety nets that will allow you to keep a reliable job.
So there are a couple of indicators one can look at. Look at the utilization of NREGS, the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. It's almost 100% in Bihar. Look at the what we call offtake from the PDS, which is the National Food Security Program. It's almost 100% always. You, if you sort of look at the per capita income across districts, so the district-wise data is not uh, updated, but the same economic survey of Bihar puts the per capita income of the districts of Sheohar and a couple of other districts at around 8,000 rupees. That's unbelievable. I mean, that, I mean, you just think about it, 8,000, you would probably be at the bottom of 180 countries. I mean, that's the level that those, and these per capita incomes are low only because there is really no industrial activity, no manufacturing activity, no attempt to do any of, I mean, sort of those issues. Bihar provides the second largest migrant workers in the Gulf is from Bihar, from Siwan district. So this can be seen in the passport issues, in the migrant workers that we have all seen through the pandemic. I think there is no dearth of evidence to say that this has not happened, and it has not happened despite uh, great promises, despite intent. And the only projects that you will see in Bihar are those of government projects. So the one FDI project which keeps being mentioned is GE Alstom, which is the train coach wagon project, which, because Bihar has had a succession of railway
Railway.
ministers, so they have managed. I mean, that's the only thing that's come. So the question that Nitish Kumar and the BJP, which have been in power in Bihar, should be asking themselves is that we have these schemes like the productivity linked incentive schemes for manufacture of mobiles. We have textile upgradation fund for all of India, which is under the textile ministry. We have funds for backward regions. Why is it that none of these ideas seem to getting flagpoled in Bihar? I mean, this is a question. I mean, I can suggest several ways that Bihar can come ahead, as indeed I have mentioned in the column. But this is a question they have to ask themselves. I mean, there is no political accountability.
Is there perhaps a need in the perhaps the people involved to make way for not necessarily new generation of a particular age, because that in politics, because of particular hierarchical parties taking certain families controls, you end up having children of politicians taking over. That's not what I mean, but the idea that perhaps a sweep through after 15 years of pure social mobilization between 1990 and 2005 by Lalu Prasad, and then a mix of social mobilization and a certain basic framework of a plinth to let some certain economic activity happen, which is what Nitish Kumar's pitch has been. That's been done. We've seen how, with over a 30-year, 15 and 15-year clean period, where the state is. To speak of what you talk about is a political question. Does it need a new generation of thinkers to come into the stage? And what should their basic building blocks be?
I mean, I don't want to lay it all squarely at the door of the politicians and political parties. There is a role here for people. I have several friends from Bihar. I find them to be extraordinarily well read, invested in politics, very proud of their Bihar legacy. This is a state which had great universities, which has contributed much to India's textile and revolution in the early days. Some of the best sugar used to be produced in this state. So it's not that the people don't know. I think there is no attempt has been there uh, to sort of bring together a discourse which looks beyond the obvious of who's looting money, chara ghotala, this, that, and the other. I mean, the BJP has gone around campaigning for Congress Mukt Bharat, and Bihar has been Congress Mukt from 1989, and it doesn't seem to have helped very much. I mean, if you look at all the parameters, we used to study along with Vivek Debroy and Lavish Bhandari state development indices, and Bihar and UP competed for the last spot across almost 20 indicators. So there is a real need for a change in discourse, and I think this can only happen if people who are invested, who have skin in the game, as I say, in Bihar, who may be living outside Bihar. There are several bureaucrats, technocrats, executives in multinationals who are all from Bihar, and they probably need to sort of trigger this conversation. I mean, and make this happen. That there needs to be a supply side situation, which is what you are describing as to change in generation of leaders in Bihar. But there is also need for a demand side approach, which is that people in in and outside Bihar must construct this narrative that this is what we are looking for. And I think that if Chandrababu Naidu took about 6 years to put Hyderabad on the map. SM Krishna and others made Bangalore not just Infosys city, but much more. And over the years, it has become also the startup city. Now every startup wants to be in Bangalore, in Karnataka. Uh, the migration of Hyundai to Chennai made Chennai and the surrounding areas into a cluster, the Detroit of India. You require one champion, one great idea, one great challenge to take. And I think Bihar's opportunity now is best in what has been opened up, farm reform. Bihar could emerge as the Brazil or the Thailand or Canada of fortified foods, of various things. I mean, this is an opportunity they should leverage. So there are many opportunities. I mean, I can think of a lot of things that can be done, but it has to be necessarily both a supply side and a demand side approach.
Okay. On that very note, let's reconnect on the 10th, Shankar, when we get a sense of what the mandate that Bihar's voters have given and who it wants as its next government with which way forward. And we'll discuss perhaps what's on that plate for that next government to do. On that note, thank you for joining us and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Kaushik.